上嘅幾位講者先。首先喺大家嘅中間
In the middle, to your left, we have Mr. Kwok Pek Chong, Regional Commander of Hong Kong Island. To his left, we have Mr. John Chair, Chief Superintendent of Police Public Relations Branch. And then to Mr. J's left, we have Kong Wing Cheung, Senior Superintendent, Public Relations Branch. And then to the extreme left, we have Ms. Ip Ching Man, Acting Superintendent of Police Licensing Office. All the panelists will speak, and then there will be an answer and question session. Please raise your hand, state who you are and the organization you represent. Each of you can ask 3 questions, and then we'll take back the microphone from you. Without further ado, I'll give the floor to Mr. Chair. Mr. Kwok, please. Good afternoon. Today, we will mainly speak on the 31st of August, coming Saturday, where there was the application for a public rally and march on Hong Kong Island. I will speak on the police's position and arrangements. We received notice from an organization earlier on that this Saturday, on the 31st of March, there was the intention to hold a public rally and march on Hong Kong Island. And it will take place at Chater Garden. There will be the rally there, and then there will be a march to Sai Ying Pun, Devoro West, Western Police Station. They said that there would be 2,000 to 5,000 people taking part. After risk assessment and on the basis and considerations of public safety, public order, and protecting the rights and freedom of other people, we have decided to issue a notice to ban the rally and object to the march. This has been sent to the organizer this morning. In the past 2 months, I think you and I have seen that there were citizens who were peaceful in their taking place of public rallies. But then, unfortunately, we have seen more violent protesters taking part in these rallies. And their violence has become more and more evident. And this shows that they have departed from their original aspirations. Please look at the screen. Starting from June, protesters, every time after public activities, they dismantled iron barriers, they blocked roads, they threw hard objects, and they circled different government facilities. You remember these included the Legislative Council building, the police headquarters, the tax revenue tower, and affecting public service to the public. And we can see that these violent acts have become more and more evident. Protesters have resorted to the using of bricks, ball bearings to attack police officers. They used laser beams to aim at eyes of police officers. This is unacceptable. They also resorted to using lethal weapons. As you could see, recently they used petrol bombs, sharpened iron and bamboo sticks, and also air guns on a massive scale to attack police officers. This has threatened the life and safety of other peaceful protesters. And just this last weekend, you could see that they also actually did damage to public assets and public articles. In Kwun Tong, electric saws were used to saw at smart lampposts. And in Tsuen Wan, we could see that there were vandalizing of shops. They used iron poles to prise open iron gates, broke the CCTV devices and also glass. And at the Hong Kong Cross Harbour Tunnel, you could see that news barriers were used to block the gate bars. They broke glass at the payment kiosks, and also they damaged octopus devices, and they also pulled away the traffic signs. Now, how are these related to public assemblies that should be peaceful? And also, we could see that innocent travelers and public people are affected. And we could see that there were disputes among people who had different political ideas. And actually, others have been besieged by protesters, and they were scolded, and even fists and feet were used to attack people. Some of the innocent people were illegally held and beaten up. We could see that these violent protesters have infiltrated peaceful assemblies and rallies and other public activities. Whenever there was the chance, they would involve in illegal acts in order to threaten the majority who were peaceful and rational. And actually, we have been gathering intelligence in this period. We could see that on the internet, people are promoting the August 31st public event as a deadline, saying that we should not rule out the possibility of sacrifice, they said. Why the 31st of August? As you know, this will mark the end of the summer holidays. Would this be the thing of young people? Well, that I cannot rule out. But we could see that the August 31st public activity might be used by people with ulterior motive to involve in illegal acts and threaten public safety and public order. This will not only harm the safety of people participating in the event, but also the reporters like yourselves and innocent people and even police officers. Therefore, in order to protect public safety, public order, and also to protect the rights and freedom of other people, we have no choice but must ban this public activity. We respect all peaceful and rational marches and assemblies. Now, this is part of our responsibility, but we cannot condone public activities which may pose danger. If we rashly allow such activities to go ahead, that would be irresponsible of us. According to the Public Order Ordinance and the Police Force Ordinance, this is our social responsibility because we have to protect law and order and public safety. We will do our best in order to protect the life and limb of the public. I will hand over the floor to Mr. Chair. Next, I will be reporting on the details of our action yesterday. At May 4, at about 10 p.m., at below the flyover at Lai Wan Road, some people posted notes with their own opinions on the wall, and then there was a dispute and which evolved into a fight. We received a report and we arrived at the scene and we arrested 3 men who were from 43 to 54 on the charges of committing assault, illegal imprisonment, and fighting in a public place. They are still being held for investigation. And then at Hong Kong, at about an hour later, that is at about 11 p.m., over 20 protesters gathered at West Kowloon Traffic Operation Base, and they used laser beams to aim at police officers within the police station. We asked them to leave, but they refused to listen, so we dispersed them. At Mantai Street in Hong Kong, we arrested 4 men who were from 19 to 23 years old on the charges of illegal assembly, possession of offensive weapons, and possession of invalid ID card. They are still being held for investigation.
Starting from this weekend, the police will conduct investigations and arrests on cases that occurred in the past 2 months, and 8 more persons were arrested yesterday, including 3 men for illegal or unlawful assembly, for the electrical incident, and for the barricading of the police force on the 28th of June, and for the airport incident on the 13th of August. 2 men were arrested for unlawful imprisonment, assault on public officer, as well as 35 men for unlawful, or a 35-year-old man for an improper use of computers. Yesterday, no ammunition was used. during our operation. We are aware that on online social media there has been doxing and cyberbullying targeting police officers and their families, and now the situation has antagonized into malicious acts against children or even kids who are in kindergarten, and these include ambush, pouring of paint, etc. The police strongly condemn such irresponsible and utterly immoral acts, and we will certainly follow up on each and every case. Since June, with investigation and reports by our colleagues, the police found that the personal data of 1,662 police officers and their families were inappropriately disclosed. We are aware that there are people online inciting other people to conduct unlawful acts, including criminal intimidation, malicious disturbance of police officers and their families, or the illegal use of their personal data to apply for online bank loans. Since the 2nd of July, 15 males and 4 females were arrested, aged between 60 and 40. Yesterday, the police received 608 cases referred to by the Office of the Privacy Commissioner for personal data, including cases of doxing. The Cybersecurity and Technology Crime Bureau has started investigation, and we will follow up on each case. We reiterate that the Internet is not a lawless world. According to Hong Kong's current laws, most laws that apply to the real world are equally applicable to the Internet. I will now hand over to Mr. Kwok. With regards to the public meeting and procession planned for the 31st of August, the organizer has applied for an appeal with the Appeal Board on Public Meetings and Processions. The police would await results of the appeal. I'd like to remind everyone that if you are to take part in a public meeting that has been banned and objected to by the police, then it might be a case of taking part in an unlawful assembly, which would be a breach of Section 17A of the Public Order Ordinance, and the maximum penalty is 5 years of imprisonment. We will monitor the situation, and we hope there will not be any unlawful acts or acts that disrupt public safety and order. The police would enforce the law, and we would pursue the liability of those who breach the law, and we would bring them to justice. I urge the public to cut ties with these violent protesters, and they should stay away from possible sites of violent protests in order to safeguard the safety of themselves and other people.
To the English part of the conference, an organization has made applications to the police to hold a public meeting and a public processions in Central and Western District on this Saturday, 31st of August. Police have prohibited the public meeting and objected the public procession. The objection is in the interest of public safety and public order and protection and right and freedom of other citizens. Now I will just briefly explain the background. Over the past 2 months, there is increase in the intensity and extensity of violence used by protesters. What begins as peaceful demonstrations or assembly in one district may easily descend to intense violent clashes extending to various districts across the city. Some radical and violent protesters hijacked the recent public events and committed reckless destructions of properties and brutal attacks on police officers. Apart from extensive road blockage, some rioters repeatedly attack our police officers with all kinds of offensive weapons, like bricks, like long sticks, like some sharpened poles, and even petrol bombs. More and more innocent victims suffer from their irresponsible acts of violence, not only about citizens as well as police officers. They suffer from random assault, and even unlawful detentions at the hands of rioters. Against this background, police vet every applications for holding public events very carefully and critically conduct independent risk assessment. As for the proposed public events on these Saturdays, from our reliable intelligence, we reasonably believe that certain protesters will commit acts of violence during the gathering. Although a protest held by the same organizers was generally peaceful on 18th of August, we have noticed a lot of online comments to propagate the use of extreme violence in the coming protests. Some netizens even went to the extreme of promoting deadly violence. From our past experience, these radical protesters have indeed realized their extreme ideas into reality. We believe there's a very, very high chance that certain radical protesters would hijack these proposed public events again. The potential danger would be a grave concern and threat to public safety. Police must take proactive steps to prevent such violence from repeating, as we are duty-bound to preserve public peace and to protect life and property. Here's come about the arrest figures. Now, at this moment, we have arrested 3 males aged between 43 and 54 for common assault, unlawful detentions, and fighting in a public place during an incident related to Sticky Notes wars in Mayfu. Later in Hong Kong, over 20 protesters surrounded the Kowloon West Regional Traffic Headquarters, behaving in a disorderly manner. We arrested 4 males aged between 19 and 23 for unlawful assembly, possession of offensive weapons. As for the previous offenses, we further arrested 34 people. Now, come to the conclusion. Police respect all citizens' rights to assembly and their rights to express their views and opinions. In fact, we have been doing this and facilitating peaceful and orderly public events over years. However, the ongoing protesters over the past 2 months have taken a heavy toll on all sectors of the community. It is our legal responsibility to protect public safety and order under the Public Order Ordinance and Police Force Ordinance of Hong Kong law. We make these deliberate decisions to object to the proposed public event. We understand the organizer has already filed an appeal, and we will wait for the final decisions made by the appeal board. And in the meantime, we hope that the public will respect other rights and freedoms when they express their own views, and also please refrain from all unlawful and violent acts.
好，問題時間開始，每位最多問3題啊。Cable。
Okay, 3 questions each. We now start the questioning session. Cable TV. Good afternoon. First, the public procession applied for by the Civil Human Rights Front. Just now you gave us a rundown of road blockages and violent acts so far, but then these were not instigated by the Civil Human Rights Front, and those that were organized by the front were mostly peaceful. And even on the 18th of August, even the CE and you yourselves also said that it was by and large peaceful. Then why is it that you did not give them the letter of no objection this time around? What kind of criteria did you use to object to the proposed activity? You just said that some violent protesters might have infiltrated into the crowd, but then do you have actual evidence to show that there was such phenomenon. Now, or is it that because of what you gathered from the internet, you are depriving Hong Kong people the right and freedom to hold public processions? And also about giving information to the mainland. Yesterday you denied it. You said that you did not do so. But then we looked at the privacy ordinance and we could see that if it is for the sake of crime prevention and detection, there could be an exemption. My question for you is, according to that ordinance, did the police hand over the information of people whose ID were recorded by you to any organization or non-Hong Kong law enforcement agencies? If mainland agencies ask you for it, will you give it to them? And also, if the data subject asked you whether the information has been given to other people, will you give them an answer? And also about the girl whose right eye was hurt. We could see a video showing her today. And did she come forward to report to the police, or did you contact her? And about the National Day celebration on the 1st of October, there is a report that some police officers were invited to go to the mainland for the celebration. Is that true? How many and of what ranks? And do you only police officers who were injured who were invited? And also, does it include the police officer who held his gun against the people of Hong Kong at Kwai Chung? Okay, Mr. Kwok will answer the question on the front, and then about handling of information, Mr. Kong will answer that, and then about the girl whose right eye was hurt, I will answer that question. I think those were the three questions, and actually you asked a fourth one, but that one will be left for later. Mr. Kwok. Well, this reporter, you know also that the Front has been operating for quite some time. It is a civic organization. It has also organized many public events in the past. And we have not objected to many of those public events that were held in the past. But as you can see, what happened in the last 2 months, the organizer might hold activities, but then every time, well, almost every time, they were hijacked. And then there would be large-scale illegal activity and clashes. We have considered that factor, and also in the past week, we could see that there was an escalation of such acts at Chin Wan, and then in Kowloon Bay and Cheung Kwan O, you could see large-scale damage done. You could see that it was intentional, and these people were doing it recklessly. They were disrupting public order. So at this particular moment, we thought that we should ban this public activity, not just the procession, but also the public meeting. We thought that there was a high risk, so we made that decision. It was not made rashly, because our work was to ensure that the public events were held peacefully. And given the situation now, if we allow this public event to go ahead, there may be more people who would be hurt. We made a decision that we did not want to make. I will answer the second question. Any law enforcement agency, whether local or otherwise, could cite the reason of crime detection, and they can seek information from the police. We understand that the public are concerned about protection of privacy. Therefore, first, I have to emphasize that the Hong Kong police force has not handed over any personal information relating to Hong Kong citizens in the past 2 months, including whether they have been arrested and other related information, to any law enforcement agencies outside our boundary. And we have not received any non-local law enforcement agencies and their requests for such information. Now, if any law enforcement agency should seek information from us, we can make use of one of the two mechanisms. One, we have the mutual legal assistance with overseas law enforcement agencies, and 2, between the SAR and also the mainland, we have a mechanism for police cooperation. In simple terms, if overseas enforcement agencies want to seek information, they can do so through the mutual legal assistance mechanism. And the Hong Kong SAR and the mainland enforcement agencies, we have this police cooperation mechanism. And when it was set up, we took reference from the Interpol, which governs international police cooperation. And in fact, the relevant information has been disclosed at the Legislative Council before. I will reiterate here that the Hong Kong police have not handed any personal information of Hong Kong citizens over the past 2 months to any law enforcement agencies outside our boundary. And if a person has taken part in the protest actions in the last 2 months or who has been arrested in this period, we will not use this as a reason to pass over their information to any law enforcement agency outside the boundary. However, we have to make clear that if someone has committed a crime outside Hong Kong, say a criminal act like robbery or other violent crimes, and if this person has also taken part in the protest in the past 2 months, we will still hand over the information to an overseas agency because he has indeed committed a crime outside Hong Kong. If all the conditions are relevant, then we will not withhold the information just because this person has taken part in protests in the last 2 months. As to whether we will inform the data subject, we will not inform the data subject if we have disclosed this information. According to Hong Kong laws, Cap 486, the privacy ordinance, there is not such a stipulation either. Well, it is simple to understand, isn't it? If someone commits a violent crime outside Hong Kong, whether it is theft or drug trafficking, if overseas agency asks us for information and then we tell the data subject, then are we helping this person to destroy evidence and to abscond? I think the reasoning is clear. I will answer the third question. In Tsim Sha Tsui, there was a woman whose eye was, it was said that her eye was hurt. But Mr. Lee is not here because I may not be able to give as much detail as he would be able to do. Well, I'd like to say first that there was violent charges by protesters. There was the use of petrol bombs and slingshots and other weapons attacking the police station. And we could not have any choice, but we had to use appropriate force in order to handle the situation. The woman was hurt in the incident. We find that very unfortunate. Today, before the press conference, we could see that she was discharged from hospital and she is on her way of recovery. We are very happy to see that she is on the way to recovery. We very much hope that she can actively contact the police and let us know what happened.
In earlier press conferences, we have explained that, we actually sent a letter to the hospital authority. We hope that the hospital can get in touch with the woman in order to furnish further information to the police, but that did not happen. The hospital contacted the woman's family, and but the family has not come into contact with us. And during an earlier press conference, this has been mentioned, but we have not received any information from the relevant people. I'd like to provide an update. We have tried to get in touch with the hospital in a bid to obtain a medical or hospital report. Starting from last week, we have been in negotiations with the hospital, and yesterday we have obtained the personal data of the woman in question. We are working on court procedures in a bid to obtain the relevant medical report so that going forward we can provide further updates on her medical condition. Apple Daily, please. I have 3 questions. First of all, yesterday, Mr. Kong explained the situation with warrants. And yesterday, we mentioned that there was a slot on the tactical vest for a warrant. Mr. Kong explained that that slot was not for a warrant, and there should be a number on the shoulder on the uniform. But many of the frontline reporters saw that no police ID was being displayed. And the vest would fully cover the police ID, so the ID would not be visible. I hope the police would understand that we are not trying to make life difficult for the frontline officers, but if anyone, including citizens, want to lodge complaints, they cannot do so because they cannot see the ID. After the Ming Pao reporter was attacked, the IPCC could not follow up because they could not ascertain the identity of the officer. So how can we get around this problem? The second question. Last Saturday, arrests were made in Kwun Tong, and a video footage was circulated online. Chow Kin Heng has already made a court appearance, and he was dragged and he was hit in the face by the police officer with a rod, and that person had no gear, yet he was hit by a rod by the police officer. The police has always talked about protesters being attacked by protesters, but what about the other way around? Would any responsibility be pursued? And the use of arms have been announced. For example, the number of times tear gas was used, but the number of pepper balls fired have not been disclosed. I would defer to Mr. Kong for the first 2 questions. First of all, on the warrants or the warrant cards. During the press conference yesterday, I explained the situation briefly. We require all uniformed officers, including those with riot gear, must display their police ID. You showed us a picture, so I would not rule out the possibility that the ID might be inadvertently masked since the officer was moving. If a complaint is to be lodged, that is possible. I have also explained that the date, time, location, and a description of the situation be filed, and with using the existing mechanism, we would try to identify the police officer in question. I would not elaborate on the use of our multi-purpose tactical vests because that has been explained yesterday. The speaker is off the microphone. I understand Mr. Kong is trying to help, but sometimes the police officers are not displaying police ID. Well, you can be reassured. It has been more than 2 months since our operation started. We have been reminding our officers on how they can address people's queries when they conduct operations. I understand there have been a number of points of concern. So during our operations, we would issue reminders. You talked about the incident in Kwun Tong. Based on the information I have in hand, our police officers were conducting crowds dispersals and arrests at Wai Yip Street, and a number of rioters hurled bricks and other hard objects as our officers. Our officers then charged forward to make arrests. The man you showed us just now was among the arrestees. After arrests were made, that person lied on the ground. He was subdued, and all of a sudden, a rioter hurled a petrol bomb at our police officers. I think that took place before the beginning of the video you showed us. So before that person was subdued, a petrol bomb was hurled at us, and it was detonated nearby. And that person was yet to be subdued at that time. And at that moment, our officers had to protect the safety of their colleagues as well as the arrestee. So we had to remove that person as soon as possible from the site of the petrol bomb, because if another bomb was hurled, who knows what would happen. I watched similar videos as the one you showed us when that person was ushered from the site. That arrestee put up resistance, and as such, our police officers reluctantly exercised appropriate force to stop or curb the resistance, and that is the information I have. In terms of the pepper ball shots, it is a non-lethal weapon, and it can be used to disperse crowds in a crowded area. And each pepper ball projector would fire one ball. I think the effect is similar as tear jerking solutions. The function is similar to a tear jerking solution, and it can help us disperse crowds. I cannot say how many balls there are in a bottle or container, and it is a device that has a propelling mechanism. So sometimes with a single trigger, multiple balls can be discharged, and it's hard to count the exact number of balls at the end of the day. So this is similar to pepper sprays. So reluctantly, in the past 2 months, in face of the violent episodes, we had to use certain devices, and we could not calculate the exact number of shots or rounds, since our colleague in charge is not present today. Well, can you tell us the number of canisters or bottles? The shots are fired by gas, and a single trigger might disperse multiple or project multiple balls. And the actual effect is similar to pepper spray, and the pepper would become powder upon projection. The gentleman at the back. I'm from Xinhua Agency. I heard that a number of police officers had their personal data, including that of their families, were disclosed, and their children face disturbance. And my question is, what would constitute a crime, and when would the relevant persons be charged, and what would be the crime? And more than 10 officers will join the national parade activity in Beijing, and under what circumstances would they take part in the celebration activities in Beijing?
First question, Mr. Kang. Second question for me. Yesterday, the Privacy Commissioner held a press conference in order to speak on doxing. Since June, we have actively investigated, and also our colleagues have reported that over 1,600 police officers and their family members have been doxed and the information released online. Some people have incited illegal acts online, saying that they would threaten our own safety and their family members' safety. And some people actually use the information in order to falsely apply for loans online. We have referred many cases to the Privacy Commissioner, At the press conference yesterday, the Privacy Commissioner said that over 600 cases, including cases relating to the police, to us. And according to Hong Kong laws, Cap 486, Section 64, we will follow up those cases. And that section says that disclosing personal particulars sought about certain individuals and without permission, that could constitute a crime, and we will take prosecution action if warranted. I'd like to add that with regard to online doxing, well, the new school year is starting, and threats and intimidation targeting children of police officers warrants our concern. Actually, some people posted the information of police officers' children online, including the school they study in and their photos. We have had a close liaison with the Education Bureau, and we have already set down certain mechanisms to tackle this. After the new school year starts, if our colleagues' children are treated unfairly, there are channels for lodging complaints at the Education Bureau. So we have told our colleagues if there is any problem, they can use established mechanisms in order to lodge a complaint. And also to facilitate the lodging of report or complaint by our colleagues at our personnel wing, we have set up a mechanism for colleagues' reports, and then we will relate the information to the Education Bureau. If the children are threatened, our officers will feel pressure at work, and our psychology unit has held talks and has published pamphlets to give suggestions to our colleagues in order to handle this situation. The management of the force is very concerned about this and will continue to have close communication with the Education Bureau in order to effectively handle such a situation. Now, for me, I hope that such things will not come to pass, but if they do happen, we will seriously follow up on them. And I believe the public at large do trust education professionals, and whether it is the school parents or actually school principals and teachers, they have the responsibility to ensure campus safety. I would reiterate that I cannot see how threatening police officers' children can relate to so-called lofty aspirations of protesters. I have seen reports saying that police officers have been invited to take part in the upcoming National Day celebration. In fact, government officials and other people in society have also been invited. I can confirm here that the force has indeed received such invitation. Some police officers will attend the National Day celebration. There will be officers from management as well as the staff side, and will of course include frontline officers who have taken part in the actions in the last 2 months. Actually, taking part in National Day celebration is not for the first time this year. We have done so in the past. Well, I can only give you a rough figure. There will be about 10 because it is still early to say for sure.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Greenstein from RT America from the United States. Number one, police officers in the United States are not very well trained in de-escalation. I'm wondering if you could speak to the confidence that you have in terms of how officers would be able to restrain from using lethal force, even if the situation is fluid and things are escalating, even if perhaps rioters are using violence against the police. Number two, Beijing says that they are not going to tolerate any sort of foreign interference into the protest movement here. I'm wondering if there's any investigation, or if there has been any investigation into foreign influence into this protest movement, including who may be supplying these protesters with some of their materials. Number three, can you speak to some of the facial recognition tools that the police department has at its disposal?
I'll pass the floor to Mr. Kwong for the third question. I'll come back and answer the first two questions.
Yep. Concerning the facial recognition tool that you have mentioned, as far as I understand, the Hong Kong police force do not have this kind of technology. And during our investigation, of course, we will try our best to make use of all kinds of video evidence. For example, the closed-circuit TV or any kind of video footage that we could retrieve from the open source. For example, the internet or the TV news, etc. But at this stage, we do not have any kind of facial recognition technology used by our police force in public place. And then I'll hand over the time to Mr. Chair.
Okay, for your first two questions, I think for the first one, and basically, in short, if protesters don't use violence, basically we don't use any force against them. And but I think all of us can see that there is escalating violence and deadly weapon being used by protesters in the last few weeks. And we can easily see the escalation of force used by them. And for the use of force by the Hong Kong Police Force, we have strict guidance as well as very stringent training for every officers. And we basically based on two main principles, which is the necessity to use the force as well as the proportionality of the force being used by them. And when protesters cause any danger to the public safety as well as to the safety of the officers, basically we need, or it is necessary for us to use force to stop their violence as well as to contain the situation. And while for the, as I mentioned, that we basically use minimum level of force to achieve a purpose, and we'll stop using that once we achieve the objective.
If I could ask, how many hours of de-escalation training are officers given?
Basically, we have training at the time when they enter the police college. And for the police tactical unit, when they join as a police tactical unit, they need to attend a how many weeks? They need to undergo about 3 months training in the police tactical unit. And I would like also to say that all police officers are accountable for the force they use, and there will be supervisors present on site to oversee and ensure that the use of force is lawful. And while for the third question you mentioned, and the Hong Kong police do not cooperate with mainland authorities as well as other overseas authorities to investigate any cases in relating to the recent protests that occurring inside Hong Kong. And so far, the cases relating to the ongoing protests are not defined as cross-border crime, and that's why any investigation does not require cross-border investigation. And I would like to say that we are capable and experienced enough to prevent and detect any crime happening in Hong Kong.
我見到大家都好快舉手，但係東方先啦。
Oriental Daily News. I'm from Oriental Daily. I'd like to follow up on the girl who had her right eye injured. Mr. Chair said at that time there were clashes by protesters in Tsim Sha Tsui. There was no other option than to deploy appropriate force. And now you found the girl's injury unfortunate. So are you admitting that the police was responsible for the injury? And if so, would you apologize? A protester who was strip searched said she had to remove all the clothing, and 2 police ID numbers were provided, and the exact police station was not disclosed. And soon after, the police clarified that no such incident happened. So on what grounds could you give such a definite answer within such a short time? The police played some videos of protesting, beating up protesters, and does the force feel that a commission of inquiry should be set up? I would defer to Mr. Kong for the second question, and I would take the first and third questions. The person involved, the person in question, convened a press conference. She explained some basic information, and based on the basic information, we would try to identify her. Like what you said, this is not a very difficult task to identify the relevant police IDs. And from the police ID in our record, we can trace the date, time, and location, etc. So this is not a very difficult task. And based on such information, we would identify the police station in question. We would consider whether we are dealing with a female arrestee and whether a body search was conducted. Yesterday and 2 days ago, Madam Chick explained the search or the body search procedures. We require detailed records to be kept, and from the records, we can identify the person in question. I reiterate that if you want to know the whole truth, the best approach is for the woman in question to get in touch with us or lodge a formal complaint. And if by then there would not be any errors. I'd like to talk about the incident in which a girl in TST had her eye injured. We explained that outside the Tsim Sha Tsui police station, there was violence, and from what I said earlier, many people hurled petrol bombs and other hard objects or petrol bombs at the police station. So the danger was not removed at that time, and as such, since we were under threat, we had to remove the dangers that the police station was subjected to. I did not say that the injury was related to the episode or incident. And like I explained earlier, we are yet to ascertain the cause of the woman's injury, and like what we said, we hope that the lady can get in touch with the police to give a first-person account of the incident. We also wrote to the hospital authority. We hope that they could get in touch with the lady or her family, but we are yet to receive a reply. At an earlier press conference, a reporter said he or she witnessed the incident in person. I hope that reporter would get in touch with us as soon as possible to explain the eyewitness. Starting from last week, we understand that the hospital authority is trying to obtain a medical record. We are yet to ascertain the root of the eye injury of the lady. At this stage, there is no evidence showing that the injury was caused by the police. I think this is merely speculation at this stage. You said you saw protesters attacking police officers. When protesters use force, we would also deploy appropriate force. As to accusations that the police was using excessive force, we have received complaints via the IPCC. in dealing with complaints and views received in the last 2 months, the police and IPCC have explained earlier that apart from a special investigation unit set up by the police and the officer involved in the unit would not be a party involved in the complaint, the relevant investigation reports would be sent to the IPCC for independent vetting. On the other hand, the IPCC also formed a group to examine relevant incidents. They would review the police's standing orders or procedures over the past 2 months, and as they indicated in an earlier press conference, a report would be submitted every 6 months and assessments and recommendations would be provided. And there is no deadline to their work as far as I understand. Foreign or overseas experts would also be invited to provide views on the incidents. We believe that the IPCC mechanism in place can effectively deal with the complaints or accusations over the past 2 months. RTHA 3.
The attack targeting the convener of Civil Human Rights Front's Jimmy Sham today? Because yesterday we have asked you about the rumors about possible attack taking place today and whether the force would take any precautions. And now Jimmy Sham and his companion was attacked today. So what happened to your earlier remarks of taking preventive measures to avoid such crimes? And critics also point fingers at the police force, saying that your selective enforcement and tolerance of attackers in Yuen Long, Tsuen Wan, North Point, etc. actually encourage people to target protesters. And with cases like this happening again and again, can you really convince people that this is not the case? Second topic regarding the ban on Saturday's march. I've got several questions regarding on that. Will the police be requesting MTR to suspend service along the Island Line that day to stop people from going to the area? Second, because according to past experience, people are going to march anyways, even though the march is banned. So would your decision actually make the whole scenario even harder to control, because people will literally be all over the city that day? And also, was the event banned because it's the anniversary of the August 31st decision and the liaison office is the destination of the march, and there are some political reasons to help Beijing save face? Third topic I'm going to ask about is officers being invited to Beijing for the National Day celebrations. You mentioned that some frontline officers who are involved in operation these days will also be going. So will there be police officers who were injured during the protests? And is an officer who actually pointed a shotgun outside the Kwai Chung police station going to be going to Beijing also? Because he's one of the he's the person who is involved in this controversy amidst the whole storm. So is it really appropriate for him to go, basically?
Okay, I will pass the floor to Mr. Kwong for the first question, and Kok Seo will answer the second question, and I will answer the third question.
Okay, first of all, about the attack against the convener of the Civil Human Rights Front. Yes, around noon of today, the convener of CHRF and his friends were having lunch in a restaurant near Jordan. And suddenly, two male who are wearing a face mask suddenly appeared and attacked that male with some maybe baseball bats. And then the two suspects then left the restaurant and went to unknown direction. Actually, the police arrived at scene shortly after receiving the 999 report, and we had tried, but in vain, to locate any of the suspect. And the case is now following up by the the district investigation team of our Yau Chim district, and the police force condemn any violence against any innocent persons, and of course, including this case. According to the information in my hand, we did not receive any previous intelligence on this incident. Otherwise, it could be properly dealt with. And I think nowadays we have a lot of different the online platform or different sources of information. And for this one, we really do not receive any intelligence. Yes, we have our intelligence gathering capability, but of course, if somebody had a great plan to attack anyone, sometimes yes, we may not be able to collect this sort of intelligence. And but please be rest assured that the Hong Kong Police Force will try our best to detect and to arrest this case, the culprit of this case. And concerning the comment of unfair handling of different incidents, I'm sorry that I could not agree with this comment. Actually, in a lot of previous incidents that you've quoted, for example, the Yuen Long 21st of July case, actually we have arrested around 30 people, and some of them have been charged to court for participating in a riot. And actually, we have repeated here for a number of times whether immediate arrests were made at scene. We have to consider a wide range of factors. For example, the number of people involved at scene, and whether we have sufficient manpower to handle the incident safely. And we have also quoted a number of examples that we did not make immediate arrests, including the serious criminal damage case happened in the Electoral Council on the 1st of July, and a lot of different criminal damage cases happened at the police headquarters. For this incident, we did not make immediate arrests too. So I don't think the comment that the police force had a unfair handling of different incidents I could not agree with this comment. And maybe I'll pass it to Mr. Chair to answer the MTR part, or Kausha.
Well, about this Saturday, whether any suspensions of MTR service, and well, basically, as the previous occasions, every time MTR is their own decisions to design on whether continue or suspend or any other adjustment with the MTR service. And in the meantime, basically, we will maintain very close liaison with them. We have regular meetings with them, especially with the high-risk situations of this Saturday. And we have a close contact with MTR and also provide our advice from the perspective of public safety and public order. And at the end, eventually, will be their decisions whether to suspend or continue service. And in any way, we will collaborate and also cooperate with their decisions. And the second question is any chances of massive public event eventually, whether subject to the decision of the appeal board tomorrow. And basically, we have all kind of assessment, not only because of this occasion, just like as other previous public events we dealt with. We will assess the situation from our intelligence, also from the public information from public source. And we have sufficient manpower prepared for it, and also tactics and equipment prepared for it. But from the operational consideration, I can't disclose much But I have to stress one point, that if at the end the appeal board object any kind of public events, any members of public took part or participate in public events that's already banned by the appeal board, he basically have committed crime. He basically participate in an illegal act. That means an unauthorized assembly. So you have to beware of this point. And also other people also have to refrain from committing any violence and illegal crime. So the last question from you is about any consideration about the destinations. That is basically the destinations the organizers submits was on the pavement opposite to Western Police District. That is very close to the liaison office of Central People's Government. But from our individual risk assessment, destination is only one of the factors we will consider. There are many, many factors we consider. The organizations, the timing, the date, any opponent parties, the route, and also very important about the intelligence and also the social sentiment at the present time. So this is not the only consideration we have. That's all from me.
For the third question about the invitation to National Day celebration, and I would like to confirm that the police have received the invitation and will send representatives to Beijing to attend that National Day celebration event. And basically this is not only limited to police, but some other public officials as well as members of the community are also invited to join the event. And this is not the first time we send representatives to attend this kind of celebration event. And our representative this year will include both management and frontline officers. And because I do not have the list of representatives in hand at the moment, and I'm sorry that I cannot disclose the actual list at this point. Thank you.
TVB 唔該。
About the procession and meeting, that is still to be decided by the appeal board. If finally the procession and the meeting will be banned, that is according to your notice today, and if there is a chance of citizens taking their own initiative and holding a meeting and procession, will you have another meeting with the MTR? It's just like that the last week for them to close off certain MTR stations in order to take care of public events that have not given notice to you. And then today, Mr. Jimmy Sham, the applicant of the event, he and his friend were attacked. Can you let us know what exactly happened? And today he got the letter of objection from you, and people might ask whether applicants of public events are threatened. Has that happened, please?
So for the first question, I would defer to Ms. Kwok, and the second question, Mr. Kong. In the coming Saturday, if public events are to take place, would MTR stations be closed? Like last time, if the MTRC decides to close certain stations, it is entirely their decision. Of course, we would maintain communication with them. We would meet and discuss the matter with them. And we would also offer our views in terms of from the perspectives of public safety and order. But at the end, the MTRC would be making the decision. Regardless of their decision, we would try to complement their work. For unforeseeable public events, would you discuss with the MTRC ahead of time, and would you deploy extra manpower? Beforehand, we would be maintaining communication, and there would be ongoing communication through different platforms between us, and the government also has a role to play. So this is already the case. I would address the second question. At about noontime today, the CHRF spokesperson was having lunch in Jordan with his friend, and at that time, two masked men dashed into the restaurant. One of the men was holding a baseball bat, the other a metal rod. They launched attacks. At that time, the friend of the CHRF spokesperson took the hits of the assailants, and his arm was hurt. We do not have information on the details of the injury. The two masked men fled the restaurant, while the injured person was taken to Queen Elizabeth Hospital for treatment. The CHRF spokesperson and his other friends were uninjured. The case is being handled by the Yau Chim Mong District Criminal Investigation Team. Our officers arrived on site upon receiving a 999 call, and they tried to conduct raids, but the two suspected assailants were nowhere to be seen on site. As for the intent of the crime, it is among the scope of investigation, and at this stage we would not speculate on the intent of the crime. The police would condemn any unlawful and violent crimes towards any innocent citizens, and we would put the criminals to justice. I have 3 questions. I'm from HKO1. The ODN reporter asked about the IPCC and CAPO, or the Commission of Inquiry. Under the there's an existing IPCC mechanism in place, but they do not have independent investigative powers. Would the police expand the IPCC's powers, or would you be supportive of this idea? If a commission of inquiry is set up, what is the police's stance? Would you resist that, or would you be supportive? I have a question about the 31st of August march. And there was an earlier march in Yuen Long. It was rejected. So if citizens hit the streets or casually make a stroll, would they be held liable? So when would the rights of a peaceful march be returned to the citizens? I'd like to ask about the girl with a ruptured eye. The police said that her information was obtained yesterday from the hospital. So under what mechanism was such data or information obtained, and did the data subject agree to such transfer of information? And what is the next step for the police? Would the police investigate the officer in question that day? I would defer to Mr. Kwok for the second question. You asked whether there would be any public event on the 31st of August, the liability of people who take part, and the police's deployment. Like we said, before and during every or even after a public event, we would assess the situation. We would conduct pre-event risk assessments, and we would make deployments and juggle our resources as appropriate. Of course, we cannot divulge the operation details. But what is certain is that even if some stubborn people decide to cause damage or resort to violence, we are prepared to act accordingly. For peaceful citizens, I want to remind them that Saturday would be a high-risk day. It is unlike any other peaceful assembly. We are reluctantly banning and objecting to the public meeting and procession because we would not tolerate any possible violence. Let me address the first question. With regards to the appointment of IPCC members, it lies with the government, and I have no comments on that. As for the other question you raised, well, I would not be repeating the same answer. When the IPCC deals with complaints from the last 2 months, well, they would deal with specific complaints, and they also have the powers to set up a special team to come up with recommendations or suggestions. We are confident that the existing IPCC mechanism can effectively deal with complaints from the last 2 months and provide recommendations. You talked about the incident in Tsim Sha Tsui. That day, we wrote to the hospital authority with the hope of getting in touch with the person in question as well as her family. We hope they can get in touch with the police proactively in order to provide accounts to the police. And in terms of obtaining her medical records, it was done through an application to the court. As for the progress of investigation, unfortunately, since Mr. Lee is not here, I have no details to report. So a warrant was secured by the court. Well, I would not divulge her personal data, but I can say that any data we obtain from the HA or the hospital was through a search warrant issued by the court. For details of the investigation, like I said, Mr. Lee is not here today, so I have no details to report. I simply want to give some pointers. Final 2 questions. Stan News. I have 3 questions. First of all, Mr. Kwok said that the police's view on the 31st of August event is that there might be sacrifices by young people since we are coming to the end of summer. Well, that would be the final day of summer. And the 31st of August would also mark an anniversary of the decision by the MPCSC, and many Hong Kong people know that. Would the police's assessment be very far off from what the people think? Are you underestimating the political wishes of the citizens? An earlier march was also banned, but a lot of people joined nonetheless. If this happens again on 31st of August, what will the police do? Mr. Kwok said that we all saw lots of footages or episodes, and in a lot of confrontations between the people and the police, many citizens criticized the police of collusion, and many cited the incident on the 21st of July. And earlier, the police asked some people to cut ties with the violent protesters, but the citizens are very dissatisfied over the 21st of July incident. Would the police divulge more details? For example, according to an RTHK documentary, three police vehicles arrived at the site, but no answer was given. We wrote to the police, but it has been 2 months and we haven't received any reply. Can the police explain why the police vehicles that arrived in Feng Yao Park Street did not take any action.
Lastly, a question on the warrant cards. According to the Police General Orders, Chapter 20, 14(5), whenever there was a request, the warrant card should be shown. And it is said that only with 3 exceptions that can be departed from. I'd like to know whether the relevant PGO is still in order. And if your officers do not show his warrant card, will that be recorded in his notebook? Mr. Kwok will answer the first question, Mr. Kong the third question, and I'll answer the second one. Your question is on the August 31st. It is a special anniversary about political aspirations. There were posts saying that people were prepared to sacrifice. And you ask whether we are sacrificing people's right to express their views. It's just like the 18th of August, you said. Even with a ban, people just came out. And they still came out to express their views, and you ask us what we are going to do. First, the police would always rationalize and facilitate peaceful assemblies and processions. This is what we always do. But this time around, from our intelligence gathering and also in the last 2 months and even in the last 2 weeks, our experience and analysis are that the situation has deteriorated. The public activity to be held on Saturday will very probably not be peaceful. Talking about expression of views and vis-a-vis safety, well, I am sorry, we must interfere, and we definitely cannot issue the letter of no objection because our assessment is that very probably this is not going to be a peaceful and safe activity. As for the August 18th event and then what will happen on the 31st, actually we are doing all sorts of preparations, including the deployment of manpower and resources. Well, we know that what we expect might not come to pass, but we are getting prepared. We hope citizens will understand that if they should come out on that day, they will face personal danger. I hope law-abiding citizens will know this point, and other people who are intent to break the law should not provoke the police. We'll definitely enforce the law. Sorry, the speaker did not come through. Well, it's just like on the 18th of August, people left the Victoria Park and they went out to many of the trunk roads in the northern part of Hong Kong. You did not enforce the law at that day. If this happens again, come Saturday, will you be dispersing the crowds? Well, if your question is if somebody is just walking in the street, of course he doesn't break the law. What if he walks on a carriageway? Well, there will be a problem. You will arrest them. Well, it will be a problem because it is against the law. Carriageways are for vehicles. Our interference, of course, must be appropriate. It depends on the situation, and we have to react to a certain situation. Sometimes you don't see policemen on the streets. It doesn't mean there are no policemen enforcing the law. Sometimes the policemen do not enforce the law at the scene. We may just act later to collect evidence. To me, enforcement is always the same thing. About warrant cards. Actually, at this press conference, we have said many times what we are required to do. First of all, our plainclothes, please address uniformed police officers first. Well, yes, there are 3 situations under which we do not have to show our warrant cards when we cannot do so, that the situation does not allow us to do so. And secondly, if our operation is affected and if our safety is threatened and also if the demand is not reasonable. I understand that there is a huge public concern about this. Let me say first and foremost that it is not difficult to identify a uniformed officer. And therefore, we think that recent misunderstanding has been mostly unnecessary. Say, for example, we put up a front and then a citizen will come to us and say that he wants to see our warrant cards. But to us, it is not a reasonable demand. Unless you think that police officers are being impersonated. Otherwise, the police identity is quite clear. And recently, there have been more violent incidents. Rioters have been throwing iron rods and other hard objects. When there is a standoff and when there are arrests being made, if they use violence and we use appropriate force to subdue them, then how can we stop for 2 seconds and show the warrant card first? We think that, again, that is an unreasonable request, and the situation does not allow it. In the circumstance, our uniformed police officers do not have to show their warrant cards. And you ask whether this should be noted in our notebook. Yes, this is what we are required to do according to procedures. But then, as I said, it is not possible for us to stop for 5 seconds in that situation to write something in the notebook. And it is only when the operation is over and when it is reasonable, appropriate to do so, we will put that record into our notebook. I will answer the third question about the July 21st Yuen Long incident, your accusation. Well, what you said about, that was an accusation about collusion between triad societies and the police. Sorry, the speaker did not come through. Please allow me to answer your question. About that allegation, we definitely would not agree with it. We are always on the opposite side of triad societies. About the operation on that day, I must mention that on that very day in Shangwan, there was a very serious violent incident. Given the resources available, the police have already done our very best to tackle the Yuen Long incident in the first instance. At different press conferences, we have spoken about this, but we have received over 70 complaints about that incident, and there is also a judicial review case underway. I'm sorry, I cannot add to whatever I had already said about this incident. And apart from the operational preparation, with regard to the progress of investigation, we have been giving an account to the public at press conferences. Up till now, we have arrested 30 persons, and 4 of whom have been prosecuted for riot. And the arrest action is going on. The police will not condone any illegal acts, and we are still investigating and prosecuting such violent acts. And you can see that we do put a lot of emphasis on this incident. Last reporter to ask questions today. I have 3 questions, please. First of all, the letter of objection against the rally on 31st of August, you say that the route proposed will involve high-risk buildings, including the liaison office and government buildings. Well, actually, are you saying that the route should not involve Central or Wan Chai? Where do you think public rallies should take place? And about the pepper ball projectiles, you are not telling us the number of canisters. Can you have the figure for us since June? And number 3, the woman who had her right eye injured in Tsim Sha Tsui, when will you let us know the progress of investigation? When can Mr. Lee come forward and give an account? Your question is whether from now on there would not be any public events that will be allowed, and where should people go to hold public rallies? Well, actually, whenever we receive an application for a public event, we do independent risk assessment. We are not going to adopt a broad brush approach. Even with the same organizer, we have issued many letters of no objection before. Even this week, look at Hong Kong Island and Kowloon, the new territories. You could see different rallies and marches. Therefore, we do independent risk assessment of every event. If you ask me where people should go and march, well, just look at the past weeks. There have been marches, and those places will be appropriate. It is just that different factors will apply. And they will be proposing different rules, and there will be different organizers, and we are going to make different decisions accordingly. It is not a broad brush approach.
We will try to rationalize or facilitate all peaceful public meetings and processions, that is for sure. As for the number of canisters of pepper balls fired, I cannot provide an answer now. So it depends on whether the pepper balls in each canister is exhausted. As like I said, the quantity deployed or used every time is different. This is different from pepper spray. So we would discuss with the operations wing on how we can provide an answer. For instance, 20 canisters were used, and for 50 other canisters they were partially used. So it's about how we quantify the amount used. So I cannot offer an answer now. The second question was about the woman with an injured eye in Tsim Sha Tsui. So I would discuss this. I would relay this to Mr. Lee when he's available. Explaining details of cases is not an ongoing practice for us, but we understand there is public concern over the case. So when time is appropriate, when we feel that the public should know more about the case, and we would offer more information. Once again, we hope the injured woman can get in touch with the police to explain what happened that day. And once again, I urge any other citizen, including reporters who allege that they saw the incident or witnessed the incident, I hope they can get in touch with the police because we hope to obtain more information in order to map out what actually happened, in order to find out about the cause of the incident. Thank you very much. This is the end of the press conference.